4 is about risk. And all business is about risk. Business is about the trade-off between an opportunity to sell a product and the risk that the product might fail. The auditor has a role in this because the auditor needs to evaluate the risks that a business is undertaking. And one of those is the fact that whether or not the business will be a going concern in the future. And the auditor does this in a way to identify how well management manages those risks. There's a good reading in your notes about this, and it's particularly 4.3, the Crawford and Stein reading from 2002. And it's actually quite interesting. An MBA, a DBA student of mine, who's now got his DBA, did some investigation on risk management at board committee level on the Australian top 200 companies. He looked at the ASX 200. And he found that 73% govern risk through the audit committee. And he considered that there are synergies in governing risk through the audit committee because risk control and annual accounts deal with the same things as the audit committee deals with. So it's valuable to have it overseen by the one committee, the audit committee overseeing both the external audit, the internal audit, and risk management. There are overlapping knowledge domains between risk and internal audit and external audit. So if you're using an audit committee which has knowledge in all of these areas, it seems sensible to group all of these activities under the same audit committee. Only 17% of the ASX 200 that responded to his survey had separate risk committees. But when there was a separate risk committee, he found that there were boundary disputes between the audit committee and the risk committee. Who was looking after which thing? There is, though, the issue of independence, and the Crawford article talks about this as well. The internal audit group needs to be independent of the management of risks in order to appropriately audit the risk management function. But when they're so closely aligned through the audit committee to the risk management function, then there may be some issues about how independent they can be. And this becomes a real tension. Do companies use the synergies of knowledge in risk management and internal audit by having them all overseen by the audit committee, or do they separate the two out? And the data that my student found was that generally they put them all together. They saw the synergies as much more important than the independence issues. But that's a question. The Internal Audit Association is not so happy about the two being together. So risk is a very important topic. We'll look at it further when we look at control risk in the next topic. But this topic that just focuses on risk by itself is an important issue, not just from an audit perspective, but from a business perspective. Because as I said at the start, business is about risk. You take a risk, you trade off that risk with the opportunity that you have for making money, for selling a product. I know about these risks only too well because we're involved in running a farm, and that's very, very risky. You're always gambling on the weather and on the markets. So read the articles for this topic and think about risk and how risk affects the business that you're involved in. And think about about risk and whether or not the internal audit department should be separated, at least at board level, from the risk management people, and whether there should be a separate committee for audit and a separate committee for risk management. Thanks very much.